Hi, guys. I'm going to aim the camera down slightly. Okay, there we go. So that you can see me and you can see sort of my books and my Mona Lisa. And this is my shelf here. It's got all my books and it's got my DVDs, my CDs, my Dali melted clock. So I was at my mother's last week, and it's good to be home. It's good to be in my own. There we go. It's good to be in my own home and with you guys. Sorry, I should have done this sooner, but I didn't. But I'm doing it now. There we go. I always like when you can. Doesn't look like I'm like drowning or anything. So happy Saturday. This is the 11th show. Next Saturday I'll have content for you, even though I'm going to be laid up on my back. And so this is an interesting week. I had to close my sliding glass door, which is right there, because the protests continue in my neighborhood very, very loudly. It's been absolutely persistent and constant honking and noise. And it's bizarre because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a child. I'm a grown woman. And I can't help but be swept up in a certain level of exuberance. Everybody's very exuberant. And, 1 second, I'm going to make sure that, Stanton, since you're producing, let me know, is the Wi-Fi okay? Are we breaking up? Are we clear? I guess you can, okay, thumbs up. Good, thank you. Only because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people on. And when I say that, I don't mean that my corner has thousands. It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood and Vine. It's Sunset and Vine. It's Ivar. There's just lots of people in this neighborhood, either walking towards it. And there is an exuberance to it, for lack of a better term, a little bit Woodstock, a little bit 1969. I see young white kids in skinny jeans with their little moose knuckles hanging out, walking down the street with signs that say, Black Lives Matter, that they've put on cardboard. And you can see that people are wearing shirts that say white silence is, I forget, but it's like, is the same as, contributing if you're just being silent. So the crowds in my neighborhood are predominantly white. There are some African-American people. It's a nice mix, but like the country, it's a majority of white. And interestingly enough, there, I read an article that said that 74% of Americans, so we're 1 point short. And, that's, as we say, that's good enough for government work. There's 74% of people agree that the George Floyd situation was egregious and that there is an imbalance in treatment and power. In fact, I want to read the exact, because I don't want to say, I'm going to read you the headline. It was a crazy week. 74% of Americans view Floyd's death as an underlying racial injustice problem. Okay, so there you have it. So here's what happened since last time we were together. Okay, because last week I was at my mother's. I drove up for her graduation, my niece's graduation, my mother's 78th birthday, and she retired on Friday, the 29th. Hard to believe my mother's 78 years old and works full time, but that's exciting. It means I come from good stock and I'm not leaving anytime soon. I'm never going to retire. I'm actually going to fall over dead on stage holding a microphone. I've made up my mind. That's how I'm going to go. Declared and decided. And I would like the last words that I hear on earth to be, oh my God, that old bitch ain't wearing underwear. That would really be what I would like to hear right before I go to meet my maker. So my mother retired, and Saturday night we had a little birthday party for her after the live stream. And, it was a peculiar feeling because I wasn't here. I was getting texts from people saying, are you home? What's it like? Don't go out. Because last week was the bad week. Last week was the looting. last week was things being broken, the Walgreens on the corner of Sunset and Vine. And as I drove home on Wednesday of this week, and we'll talk about that, as I drove home Wednesday of this week, I didn't know what I was going to see. And what I saw was white boards, no graffiti. The whole Gower Gulch shopping center is boarded up in clean white boards, and the parking lot is swept. And it's amazing because it appears that not only did nothing happen, I've never seen the Gower Gulch so clean. So, to be clear, let me ask you something, Stanton, since you're watching. It keeps flashing on my end as if I'm taking pictures or there's an edit. Is that happening on the live stream or is it just on my phone? In fact, I'm gonna see that's why we can do this. Can I hear you or can I not hear you?
You can hear me, and I think it's fine. It seems fine. Chat, if things are looking good on your end, give us a big thumbs up on the video and in the chat.
Yeah, because it keeps snapping as if I'm taking pictures. But that's okay. As long as it's smooth and it's not cutting what I'm saying, I don't mind the snapping. So that being said, I came home and the vibe, I felt very cautious on Wednesday night. Like what's going to happen? I felt cautious. And oddly enough, everything went fine, as I got in and cleaned my car. Whenever you travel, you've got junk in your car and luggage and whatnot. And then I went to get a bite to eat. As a matter of fact, a plug here. I went to my friend Stanton. His wife has a lovely restaurant in the Valley on Magnolia. And I had dinner there and it was next level. So I was very happy with a belly full of sushi. And I went to return, and Stanton will tell me the name of the restaurant because I believe it's Bonsai, but I want to make sure that I have it right because it's really good. And if you live in Los Angeles, and especially if you're in the Valley, I can't believe that we've been friends all this time, and this is the first time I've eaten there. But that being said, I digress. I was feeling cautious. And in fact, even in Burbank, even on Magnolia, there were boards up everywhere. And I was feeling very cautious pulling into the neighborhood. And the Uber driver that met me at the airport, because I had a rental vehicle to drive up to my mother's, he was bringing us home, and me and my niece were in the Uber, and we had a lovely dinner in the Valley, dropped the rental truck, and we were driving back, and everything appeared copacetic until we got about 2 blocks away. We were in front of the Capitol Records building, and then you could see it. Just a big clump of cars and people and banners and cardboard signs. And I was careful because I had my niece with me. I was careful and mindful, but I felt no menace. I've been places where I felt menace. I've never been in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, but I was there the Monday night before, which is the Crew of Orpheus, because a lot of people don't know that Mardi Gras isn't just Fat Tuesday, that's the Crew of Comus, that I know a lot about New Orleans because I love it. And it actually goes on for several days, and there's several parades. And the second to last parade on Monday night is pretty wild, the Crew of Orpheus. And I didn't feel like I was in imminent danger, but I did feel, and this was before Katrina, I did feel that I had to have my wits about me. I didn't feel that way Wednesday night walking towards my building, the couple of blocks we had to walk from the Capitol Records building to my building. And that was Wednesday. Tonight's Saturday. Every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and tonight, there have been large groups of people on these major Hollywood intersections, honking, waving flags, hanging out of the windows of cars. The police have been fantastic in my neighborhood. We do have National Guard. We do have people walking. It was peculiar to be on Larchmont, which is like, that's 1958 lives, and see National Guard with guns, like big rifles. I like big guns. I don't know the names of all the guns. I know some little guns, but I don't know, like, this is an AK-47. This is a semi-automatic. This is a 30-06. I just know, like, gun. I know little guns. My dad used to shoot Glocks and Berettas and Walter PPK, so I know those guys. So right this minute, the door is closed because it's very loud. And I'm going to circle back around and say, not only do I not feel menace at all, I feel a joyful exuberance, because it does sort of bleed over. It does get in the ether. It is in the energy that things are changing, and they're changing rapidly, because that's the world we live in. Everything is rapid. That was my niece dropped her iPad. She's just off camera. I was going to ask her to be my co-hostess, but that's not her jam. But she's very young, and we talk about these things. And people under 30 have a whole different perception of each other, of culture, of, the lines are very, very blurred, but it's a respectful blurredness. And I talked about this on my 3:30 today. So I apologize for those of you who are diligent, that are always with me, Hector and Max and Evie. I know all of you. And those of you that are diligent, that are always with me on Facebook Live at 3:30, I apologize that you hear some overlap of material. But I don't assume that everybody's with me all the time. So it's a little bit like in a comedy club. Sometimes you're going to hear a variation of the same joke. But what I've been talking about for the last few days with my friends, my niece, and people that mean a lot, for her birthday, because my brother takes my nieces on trips for their birthdays. He, especially for Sweet 16, my oldest niece, who's now 18, chose New York, and my brother took her to New York. And my younger niece, who just turned 16, asked to go to New Orleans, and loves New Orleans the way that I do, the way that my brother does, which is the way my father did. And the reason why I'm saying this is because your love, your attraction, your desire to things has a lot to do with how you were brought up. I believe that every family is a country. It's an island, it's a country, it's a continent, it's whatever you want to call it. It's a body of land. And the governing body is the parents. And your parents teach you foreign policy. However you feel about other people, you probably were inculcated before you knew that that's what was happening. It's just the way life is. People vote how their parents vote. People tend to live where they were raised. There's people that leave and think different and expand and go to college or go, study abroad. Yes, people change and grow beyond their familial boundaries. But there's still a part of you, a big part of you, that was taught foreign policy by your parents, by your grandparents, by your family, your tribe, your extended family. And my family, I in my act, one of my first jokes I ever wrote was how I beat up a little boy. And this is the joke, and then I'll break it down for you. I have two jokes that very much speak to this. The first one is that when I was a little girl, when I was in 6th grade, I was like a bruiser, and I wrote this boy, Michael Hilson, and I know that I shouldn't say last names, whatever, but I'm sure Michael would get a kick out of it. I wrote Michael a note. This was back in the day. I wrote, "Do you love me? Check yes or no." And all it was like, "Do you want to be my boyfriend?" Because we'd hung around talking. He liked me. He liked that I was smart, but evidently I wasn't girlfriend material. And in all fairness to Michael, I was quite the little heifer with a pretty good pizza face working, oily skin. I wasn't a looker. I was smart and I was funny, but I wasn't a looker. But hey, we talked a lot during lunch, so I took a chance. I wrote, "Do you love me? Check yes or no." And in the joke, I write that he wrote, "No way, fat pig," and slapped it on my desk. But he didn't do that. It's just for the joke. But he let it be known, like under no circumstances was he interested. And my feelings were hurt. And he did say fat and a few other things. So I waited for him after school, and I beat the hell out of them. I did. I just beat them up. And then I walked home very slowly because my mom is a mommy, and she's home at the time. She was a stay-at-home mom, and that was back when, at the beginning of the school year, you would get a list of the other children and their contact information on a piece of paper that was mimeographed. Like back in the day, we used to make dittos. They were called dittos. And that's why people say ditto, which is like a copy, and it would be on this machine with ink, and the teacher would spin it, and sometimes you would get to help her make these. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh my God, what year is this? Early 70s. And there was a smell. The ink in the paper had a very specific smell. I can smell it if I close my eyes because I was teacher's pet and a total nerd. So I got to help make the dittos, the handouts. And so I waited for him after school and beat the hell out of him. And then I walked home. And by the time I got home, the phone was ringing because Michael's mother had our contact information. And in the joke, I say that my mother asked her, what did your little boy do to my little girl that made my little girl hit your little boy? And when my mother looked down, I said, he called me fat. Well, my mother's, can throw some shade. And then the punchline is, you're lucky she didn't kill the little pendejo and that she was on my side. And then we laughed and danced and ate Entenmann's. But interestingly enough, that speaks more to culture because we lived in a very Anglo neighborhood called West Miami. And we were, there were not a lot of Latino families. And I realized in a lot of ways that I was different. Not different. Obviously, you look at me. I don't, I'm not sitting here singing everything's free in America. But culturally, we did things differently. Like, for instance, if we had family from out of town, even if they were staying for a long period of time from Venezuela or Puerto Rico, they would stay at our house. I mean, they'd stay a long time. Like, I'd go to school and say, my cousins are here and they're still here. And then I realized that, and I never distinguished between white people and non-white people because growing up in Miami and being tall and fair skinned, if you tell a Cuban that they're not white, they'll kill you. That there's a big difference between being, Hispanic and being of Spanish or Portuguese or, different origins. I always try to educate people and tell them that not all Latinos are the same any more than a Belgian person is like a British person. But, we had different Caribbean, Creole, Afro-Cuban. We had different things. We roasted a pork in the backyard, like literally dug a hole and put a pig on a spit on Christmas Eve. And our neighbors would pop up you could see them like over the fence, like what is going on in their backyard? And that's because my Uncle Lewis would go and buy a pig and we would eat it. And we would fight over the rind, like the crispy, like straight off the pig, not like popped in a bag. And I'm telling you these things because that's my culture. My culture is Latino, it's Caribbean, it's Catholic, it's superstitious. I always tell people when they talk about, spiritualism or Santeria, which is like, positive, white magic, if you will. I'll say, well, Catholicism was our overall insurance policy. And then all of the other little superstitions we had in the house were our gap coverage. And I will bet that wherever you're from, whether you're from, Louisiana or you're from wherever you're from, unless you're straight up like super dry hump British person, and I'm talking, when I say British, it's English, Irish, anybody from that part of the world, which are pretty waspy, stiff upper lip, But I'm going to guess that if you have any Greek in you, if you have any Italian, they have the horn, and my Jewish friends have the hand of God. Whatever your religion is, I'm going to guess that you culturally have your own kri-kri, your own superstitions, your own rituals, your own traditions that come from your family and your the background of your family. And that's your country. That's what you learn. That's what you have. That's who you are. And within your country, your family, your group, you decide, you're taught, you're inculcated how to feel about other tribes, other people, and how they act. And that being said, it's a time now where we have to integrate differences, where we have to understand that we love diversity as a concept. We love the idea. We travel to other countries, and even within America, we love Chinatown and the French Quarter, and all of it. Even West Hollywood, Boys Town. We love the idea of these things, and we love to go there. We love to go there. But something about understanding that the diverse, the exotic, the different from us doesn't have to stay where it is. That it can come into our neighborhood. That we can have less borders between the countries of our families, of our neighborhoods. That it's necessary, that it's acceptable. Because what happens is when you're not accustomed to something, when something is exotic, when you don't know about it, when you're unsure of it, then that's when fear and doubt can creep in, and where you can react to interacting with somebody out of where you expect to. Like, oh, I expect this over there, not here. And that's why, interestingly enough, the honking doesn't bother me. I appreciate the freedom of movement. I appreciate that these protests are taking part all over the country and all over this particular city. Now, let me address a few things that I saw in the news and how I feel about them in regards to us and our relationship. Number one, I'm a big picture thinker, and I'm all about what you put in your brain and how it manifests in different ways. I am 57, as you know. I don't hide it. And I'm not going to say I've never watched a horror movie. I have watched The Shining out of extreme respect to Stanley Kubrick. I've watched it several times, many times. I have watched Rosemary's Baby because it's a classic. I finally watched The Exorcist at about 44 years old. And I'll tell you a story about The Exorcist very quickly. It was a phenomenon when I was a child. When I was in 6th grade, The Exorcist was in single screen movie theaters for months at a time. It was a thing. Like, I haven't seen a thing like that in 4 decades. They called Jaws the original blockbuster, but The Exorcist was a societal phenomenon. People talked about it at cocktail parties and water coolers, and it was in the Inquirer that people were needing exorcisms. It was a big thing in the tabloids. And so my girlfriend Bridget, whose mother was a drinky pants, we talked Bridget's mother, because this was way before Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and we knew that if we could get her mother liquored up, we could talk her into being our guardian, because under 17 not admitted. We were 6th graders, but we talked her mother, Marie, into taking us to see The Exorcist. And within the first 5 or 7 minutes of the film, if you've seen the movie, the little girl comes down to a dinner party and says something scary. I think she tells an astronaut, "You're going to die up there." I, basically wrapped Marie's leather jacket around my head and heard the entire movie as pretty much as a radio show, and it still terrified me just hearing it. Forget the cursing, just the content and the voice terrified me. Now, would it have terrified me if I wasn't Catholic? Would it have terrified me if I didn't hear my family talking about it in Spanish? Would it have terrified me if I didn't have a little shadow of doubt within my mind that something like that could really happen, would have terrified me. If I hadn't grown up around people that actually believed in Ouija boards, maybe not. But again, we circle back to culture and why some things affect some people more than others because of their beliefs and the depths of their belief. So, horror movies. I digress, but I'll bring it back around. And that is that I'm a big believer that you can't unsee something you've seen. So at my age, I can count the number of horror movies. I've never seen a Chucky. I've never seen even a Scream. I've never seen a Halloween. I've never seen a Friday the 13th. I've never seen a Saw. I never saw Blair Witch. I mean, you can go down the list. People come up to me and go, did you see? Have you seen? No, I have not. Because your brain is pure and beautiful and wonderful, your mind, your soul. And since I was very young, and I don't know where I got this, it predates, my country, my inculcation. And maybe it's because I value my mind, because I wasn't cute, I was smart. But instinctively, I knew you can't unsee things. So in the world we live in now, in this world of YouTube and seeing everything, I think I already knew that I didn't want to see certain things. And then I remember that when I was in junior high, Carl Wallenda fell from a wire to his death. And they didn't warn the people watching that that's what was going to happen. They just showed it on the news. And I remember not being told to turn and seeing he fell off a wire, bounced on the top of a cab, and died right there. And I remember how that affected me profoundly. And I can tell you, I never saw the video of Paul Walker, of his accident. To me, that was a snuff film. I can't believe how many people saw it. I don't watch these things. I don't watch live streams. I don't need to know what specifically was looted. I don't need to see the look on their faces while they're doing it. I didn't watch the Floyd video because just seeing the still photograph, I can close my eyes and see the knee on his neck. I can close my eyes and see that photo at Abu Ghraib with the woman with the guy, the prisoner stacked up in the gun. I can see. I grew up with Vietnam on TV. It was the first televised war. I can close my eyes and see the image of the little naked girl running with the napalm on her back. I don't need to see video of anything. I have not watched one frame of footage of what went down when I wasn't here. I came home, clean boards, no graffiti, National Guard, AK-47, and peaceful protests of young, exuberant people of every stripe and color and sexuality and your world is a reflection of what you believe and what you put in your mind. If you decide that you want to, and some people say I want to be informed. Well, I don't want to talk about something I don't know, or I get that. I respect it. You decide what you want in your mind, and then you'll know what the toll is for that, what the price is you'll pay, if it disturbs your sleep, if it makes you anxious. Because you don't need to see it to know that it exists. I've never seen Jupiter. I know it's there. I've seen pictures of Jupiter, but I've never looked through the Hubble telescope. I don't have a personal experience with Jupiter, but I know it's there. I know what it looks like. I don't need to see it. It's there. I know that things occurred while I was gone. Nothing's really happened since I've been home. I know things occurred last week. And in fact, as long as we're on the subject, oddly enough, last Sunday morning, the 31st, right after I did the show that I shared with you guys, within a few hours, 12 hours, by 8:30, 9 o'clock Sunday morning, I actually saw a dead person right in front of me. And here's what happened. For those of you who didn't watch any 3:30s this week, I was walking my dog in my mother's neighborhood. My mother lives in a fancy trailer park, like the Malibu trailer park. It is a mobile home park, but it's quite nice in South San Francisco. It's actually gated. They actually have a guard gate and a pool and a clubhouse. It's really nice. And San Francisco being as expensive as it is, it's a good deal. So my mother lives in a very nice prefab and a very nice mobile home park. But it's diverse because it is a good deal, and it's hard to find housing in San Francisco. It's extremely diverse. There's all kinds of people in my mother's neighborhood. And I was walking my dog, and I saw a lot of smoke at the end of her street, right at the end of her street. I was like, what is that? So even though I was basically in pajamas, I had a mask on though, so I figured that's kind of good. I walked to the end of the street, and the smoke was coming out of the grill, the radiator of a truck that had run up on an embankment because it's hilly, and the man in the front seat was clearly unconscious and unresponsive to the neighbors who were kind of shouting and trying to see if they could revive him. And there was a dog, and the dog's head was next to his head, like right there wedged. I thought the dog was dead because it didn't even blink. I thought that this heavy man, you could see through the window of the truck that he was a heavy guy, and it was a small truck, little kind of Toyota pickup. And the dog didn't move. It didn't even blink. So I thought, he's unresponsive. He's gone up on the embankment, and he's crushed his dog, and he's unconscious. And I stood there, not as so much a rubbernecker, but more to be honest, the curiosity of the situation and the dog. And before the EMTs could get there, the police got there. There were like 3 squad cars pulled up, bam, bam, bam. And there were a few demonstrations in San Francisco last week, but not terrible from what I could tell. And if I opened the door, you could literally hear the honking going on. You guys hear that? I think you can. Yeah, that's been going on night and day since I got home. And oddly enough, it's not bothering me. So this man who was unresponsive and not wearing a mask, these policemen did everything they could the way the truck was wedged, and the smoke was because he had passed out and evidently his foot was stuck on the accelerator. These policemen, who were a pretty diverse crew of police, there was an Asian one and a white guy and a Mexican guy, but these policemen ran out of their squad cars, did everything they could to loosen the doors and get him out, and they spread a blanket. They had him on his back. They started compressions. As they started compressions, the EMTs got there, and as soon as they could get him out and get the seat forward, the dog came to life and just got out of the car and sat next to the man. I was watching all of this, and there was a neighbor of my mother's filming the entire scenario. And I wish that it was posted somewhere, because these policemen would not give up. They wouldn't give up. They were very kind to the dog, and they kept the chest compressions. And then the EMTs were clearing to do the and energetically, I could feel that the man was gone. I don't know how I knew. But I'm an intuitive person, and I've put 2 dogs down. And I know that there's a moment where you're a living entity with a soul, and then you're a piece of furniture. It leaves you. And with humans, and when they revive you, your soul comes back, I guess, and you stop being a piece of furniture. But if you've ever seen a dead person gone to a funeral, it's one thing to see them in a box. And again, you expect that. But when you see a dead person out of context, it's not the same. I've only done it the one time. It's all I needed to do it, because I was very sure that there was nothing they were going to be able to do. So once they were preparing to paddle him, I walked away. I didn't need to see what was going to, I'm not that person. I didn't need to see that. I don't need that in my mind. I wouldn't have been able to unsee it. Him frozen in the car with the dog's face next to him is the image in my mind that I see. And knowing how sweetly the dog got out of the car and sat next to his owner is the image that I choose to keep. And that's how I live my life. I'm extremely discerning, because your mind is a computer. And how many times have you heard junk in, junk out? How many times have we, as a society, as we move forward with technology, understood that you can't, if you accidentally put a period somewhere or it's case sensitive, think about how careful you are when you're putting something into your computer, a password. It has to be precise or it won't work. And then think about how willy-nilly you are with your own mind. And now even stuff that's already in your mind, maybe that came from your tribe, your parents, your foreign policy that you were taught, you haven't bothered to look at that. We look at files in our computers. We throw out papers. A lot of people during the COVID have done clean sweeps of their home. I myself went today and donated bunches of stuff because I was just waiting for one of my favorite thrift stores that benefits the Free Clinic LA down on Sunset, reopened and was taking donations. I've been sitting on a trunk and a half load of stuff to take. I took it today and it felt very good to get rid of so many things. How many of us keep beliefs, opinions, prejudices that we didn't even kind of put in there? And we've never stopped to think about if we really feel that way, if we still feel that way, or if we've had different experiences than the generation before us. I'm grateful that being raised in a minority family, that I didn't have to, and again, Latinos in Miami are not a minority. We're not. But I understood that, because imagine when I was a little girl, and think about this, no Latino has risen even to being, in my, that I can think of off the top of my head, the the governor of an important state. There might have been a Latino governor somewhere, but I can't think of one. Certainly not New York. Certainly not California. And I wonder, because we are such a large minority, if indeed we're still a minority, I wonder why that is. And as this whole movement, this whole Black Lives Matters, which is actually really moving the needle, it's really happening. Things are happening. Things are being looked at. The perfect example of that situation is that last week I told my mother that I was going to shop at Nordstrom's, because Nordstrom sent the letter out immediately that said basically my belief, which is a decision, a problem that can be fixed by writing a check is not a problem. To make a decision to move forward is a good decision, not a decision in fear. And they said in the letter, we can rebuild, we can clean up, we can restock, but we are sensitive to the fact that things need to change. They never said violence, destruction, looters, theft, crime. The letter was not in any way, shape, or form negative. We all know what happened. I didn't need to see it in a live stream. I know what happened. It's hard not to know. But I love the fact that they chose not to acknowledge the darkness, that they decided to light a match, to light the way, to say, hey, follow us. And now I just got a letter from Target. And big business, let's face it, Black Lives Matter started a few years ago with a shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. And this week, as a matter of fact, the first African American female was voted the mayor of Ferguson. That was one of my stories. I pulled a bunch of news stories, but they're all in here because I looked at them. I can integrate them into what I'm saying to you. But Black Lives Matters isn't a brand new concept. It's been coming for a while. Just like Me Too has been coming for a while. But see, it takes time to get over the hill sometimes. Sometimes you push and you push and you push. And then you finally get that momentum and you go over. I feel that one of the reasons I'm feeling sort of an exuberance is because it went over. It went over. I know this because I can hear the conversations, intuitively at the highest of levels, which is why you get a letter from a Target, from a Nordstrom's. The building I live in has sent out some extremely well-crafted and sensitive letters about what's going on and what demonstrations are happening and how to stay safe. The letters are positive and very sensitive, and I like that. As a Latina female, as I was saying earlier, I was aware that I was a minority because there wasn't anybody that looked like me anywhere. I loved television. There were no Latinos on that I can think of on Bewitched, of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show, The Wonderful World of Disney, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. In fact, the first celebrity death that affected me profusely and profoundly, and when I say profusely, I meant I cried and it lasted for a long time, was when Freddie Prinze committed suicide. Because Freddie Prinze, who was also Hungarian, he wasn't just Puerto Rican, he was quite the mutt. And maybe it was too much too fast. But when Freddie Prinze did Chico and the Man, which was the first he was a very big deal. Freddie Prinze was the man. He was Chico and the Man. Jack Albertson was fantastic. That was the grandfather from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And Chico and the Man was a wonderful show. And in fact, I have the pilot on DVD. I found it at Amoeba. And he would say, looking good. He had all of his little catchphrases, or he'd say, not my job, man. And then I found out that when I was in 10th grade, that he committed suicide, shot himself. And I cried and cried and cried because we were very proud. My family, my tribe, my people, we were very proud that there was somebody who looked and sounded, even if he was saying very cliche things, not my job. And he was charming and he was handsome. And I flash forward to Lin-Manuel Miranda and how some people that I know that are a little older and a little more conservative said that they didn't care for Hamilton. The whole idea of a diverse cast being the founding fathers and there being rap and hip hop. Well, I'm here to tell you that one of the worst parts of COVID was not being able to see Hamilton. It's fantastic. I've seen it twice and I was going for 3, not able to do it. Hamilton is a work of genius, make no mistake. I want to switch gears now because the world I live in now, I do see women, I do see Latino women, I do see African American women, I do see all shapes and sizes and colors. I see that people are not perfect and that media is now reflecting that people are not perfect. And interestingly enough, art imitates life, but sometimes life imitates art. And I think that what's happening now is that sort of a dream of a TV show, if you want to call it a TV show or a movie, You have all of these things that are very hard to watch, whether it's about, Jackie Robinson being a baseball player, 42, Fruitvale Station, Selma. Even when I was a little girl, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with Sidney Poitier. To Serve with Love. To Serve with Love. Wow, that just hit me. I totally forgot To Serve with Love. It's brilliant. And the theme song sung by Lulu is brilliant. Wow, that's so weird how sometimes things hit you. The kids in To Serve with Love were very racist then. And anyway, if you've got the time, I'm sure it holds up. And I think that there will be a lot of movies made about this. Just like there's documentaries about Live Aid and Woodstock and the 68 Democratic Convention. There's a reason why things happen. This is a perfect storm. COVID kept people, sort of not just isolated, not just boxed in, but having to stretch and grow and do things they were afraid of, whether it's learn how to Zoom or, try to take over their children's education, or even just to entertain their children, or not knowing if this disease was going to get them the minute they, touched a knob at a Trader Joe's. There comes a moment in time where things just come together. And the negative is that people call it the perfect storm. There's actually a book called The Perfect Storm, which is very, very good. And it was about, the perfect storm, a boat that was overcrowded and under-maintained, hitting a storm that was underreported and overly powerful, etc. And people being in a little bit of scarcity, they've lost their jobs, and this was the perfect storm for change. And we are for sure over the hill. And when I look back at Katrina, when I look back at storms, real storms that I've seen, Maria hitting Puerto Rico just a few short years ago, 2017. I've been to Puerto Rico recently. It's doing much better. I've been to New Orleans in January. It's doing much better. We're going to be great. We're already great. I could open the door, let you hear some more horn honking. I want to talk a little bit about, somebody posted To Serve with Love. Don't even, the picture will make me cry. It really did hit me very hard in the chest, to be honest with you. There's sometimes memories that come to me that don't just come to me. They're like something happens where it unleashes an entire scenario, like an entire episode of Mad Men happened in my head as soon as I said that. But there's so many things that happened this week, including I've never seen a former president address a situation during the time of a sitting president. And Obama came out and spoke about George Floyd's death in the most perfect, of Obama ways, which is, this is an opportunity to have change. And, he was positive and clear. Didn't watch the video, read the transcript. And I want to talk about the policeman in Buffalo, New York, that shoved the old man. Again, I didn't see the video, just the still. But within a very short amount of time, they were suspended, and then almost immediately they were brought up on felony charges. And they've been released on their own recognizance, but in July they're going to have to face the music of the fact that they pushed a 75-year-old man down and he cracked his head. He's in critical but stable condition. And the world we live in now, with social media, with cameras everywhere, it's a different world. Everything happens at lightning speed. And everything is going to have to adjust. I talk all the time about deferred gratification, but we're all being, basically forced into a comet. They have these things when you're training to be a pilot, especially an astronaut, but a regular pilot, even called the vomit comet, where they move at very high G forces so that you can see what your body's going to feel like if a plane goes into a spin or a dive, and that you can keep your wits about you and steer the plane. And in the world we live in now, we're all a little bit in the vomit comet. We see things immediately. We comment, they spread, they go viral. People have opinions. Lawmakers and check signers and people in power have to heed to those opinions. But they also have to know if what is just and fair in these extremely high speed revealing times. And I knew that we were going to get here, because the first day that I was on KFI in January of 14, when I had my own Saturday night show from 8 to 10, which this is a little bit of an homage to, I remember, and I'm going to pull up the story. I remember, and one of the stories that I saw today was that there was a man on a bicycle, 61-year-old guy in Maryland, that accosted 3 people that were putting up Black Lives Matter signs. And his video of him doing this went viral. They found him, they arrested him, they charged him. But when I was first on the radio, and by the way, just as a sidebar, one of the things that I'm finding very exciting that's already happening is what I talk about, culture and art. There's a beautiful yellow painting right down the street in Washington that says Black Lives Matter in yellow. It's really pretty gorgeous. But here is the story, which is that a young woman in January, hang on, because I had the link and now the LA Times is telling me, like, here it is. A former Alhambra school administrator whose confession over the phone to molesting a former student was uploaded to YouTube has pleaded guilty in Riverside County as part of a deal with prosecutors. So the first day that I was on the air, my boss, Robin, took me to lunch at, we had a Morton's in the ground floor of the Clear Channel building. It's still there, but it's closed now. But they have steak sandwiches for takeout and very good prices. I keep getting the emails and it makes me laugh because I don't eat steak, but I'm like, that's a good deal. If I still ate meat, I'd be there. So we had lunch and she said, what are you going to talk about on your show tonight? And I was very honest with her. I said, day-to-day news isn't interesting to me. News cycles, things that, and I get it. I get that that's what journalists do, but I'm not a journalist. I'm a commentator. I'm a person who observes and it becomes a joke or a story or a comment. And when I decided to do talk radio, I said, I'd like to talk about what I call, phenomena, which are things that are going to change on a tectonic shift level, the way we govern ourselves. And in fact, a lot of people were very upset with me because I talked a lot about the candidacy of Donald Trump and the potential candidacy as early as 2015, because it is phenomena that a non-politician could come out of left field and run for president. And I even said that he could potentially win. I didn't say I wanted him to win or I was going to vote for him, because how I feel about specific things is my own business. Again, I report landscape, and that was an important part of the landscape, no different than the previous election, 2 elections ago, when we had an African-American candidate for the first time in history. And people got very upset with me then because I talked a lot about what that meant and that it was historical. So the story, the first day that I was on the air, I told my boss, I'm going to speak at length. Oh, somebody put up the Black Lives. It's gorgeous. First of all, I like yellow. And second of all, it's just so neat and perfect and gorgeous. And what happened was that a young lady named Jamie Carrillo called a former coach to talk about how their relationship, sexual, had damaged her and affected her. And the woman apologized and admitted and confessed. And, you know, it was, I did see that video because I was going to be on the air and I needed to know what I was talking about specifically. And it wasn't negative. It wasn't damaging. It was actually very cathartic to not only see this young woman, you know, claim her strength and make the call, and the woman answered the phone and they had a conversation. And she recorded the call and posted it to YouTube, the entire transaction. Well, she was past the statute of limitation. She was past the statute of limitation. However, leopards don't change their spots. The rate of recidivism on molestation, that a molester will molest again, is, I think, between 98 and 99%. It's even more than drug addicts relapsing. So at that point, the coach had already been promoted and was now a principal, a former vice principal, Andrea Michelle Cardosa. And because there was another young lady within the statute of limitations who saw it on YouTube, she was arrested and she pled guilty. She was taken right out of her high school in cuffs. I saw it. And I told my boss, I said, the fact that she posted it to YouTube, it didn't get taken down. There were no repercussions for filming and taping someone without their consent and then dispersing it. I said, this is a game changer. We are now going to have the court of public opinion. Everything, every Catholic priest that ever crossed the line, every, movie producer, hello. Think of what has happened. I went on the air January of 2013, okay? So 2014, excuse me. In the 6 years since this event to today, you can almost draw a straight line of how things don't begin and end anymore in a traditional court of law, that people's opinions have weight, that there is a power of one, because you never know what video, what photograph, what taped confession is going to go viral, is going to spread and have an impact. We don't know anymore. And the whole idea of, innocent until proven guilty, it's a very nice notion. It's extremely idealistic and delightful. But let's be honest, it's, idealism is the difference between a woman being able to say, you know what, I should be able to walk down the street naked and have nothing happen to me. I should be able to meet somebody in a hotel room to discuss business and nothing happen to me. Idealistically, of course, you should be able to walk buck-ass naked down the street. Realistically, the world we live in now, opinions matter, perception matters, social media matters, going viral matters. It matters. And energetically, I can see now where people are taking it very, very, very seriously, starting with that letter from Nordstrom's. Whether they had a PR team craft it and they believed it or didn't believe it when they wrote it, maybe some higher up guy, was actually furious about the looting and destruction. But cooler heads prevailed and said it's a different world now. We have to act with the sensitivity of all eyes are on us all the time, because that's what social media has created. And now you can't just go into a world. Imagine Katrina happened in 2005. 9/11 happened pre-social media altogether. The world we live in now, you cannot afford to be tone deaf. You can't afford to not respect other people's culture. You can't afford not to integrate all manner of thinking and being. You can't afford it. You can't afford it with cash, and you most certainly can't afford it with currency. So until we see each other again, I'm asking you to treat your mind, your heart, your soul, your brain, your mind, as if right from this second forward, you know how happy you get when you get a brand new, I don't know if you're like me, but when you get a brand new, whatever, phone. I maybe you're not an eye person, but if you get I got an iPad Pro this week. It's very exciting. But whenever you get that new thing that's virgin and pure, doesn't have a single photograph on it yet, not one email, not one text, it's just there in your hand. Treat yourself all week as if you're that thing. Decide what to take in. Discern. Don't just have what I call sort of spiritual slop the hogs. I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to take it all in. No, not a good idea. I take you in. I take your comments and even your criticism, which I don't get very many. I sometimes feel that I'm preaching to the converted, that maybe I'm not fragile, but I am sensitive, and maybe I'm lucky that I have, X amount of followers versus some people that are huge influencers that have thousands and thousands of people. But of those thousands and thousands, some of them say very mean things. That's not what I get. I don't. I get very, very good things from all of you. And I let it all in because it is marvelous. And I choose to believe that there's more people like us that are understanding and kind and discerning and don't want to see the ugliness and the darkness. We don't resist evil. Resist ye not evil. We don't acknowledge it. We don't take it in. We don't give it power. Thank you for being in my tribe. Your vibe creates your tribe. Thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight. Next Saturday night, I will have content. I tape something just to play it, but I will take the night off, and then I'll be back the following one. You are wonderful, and until next Saturday, love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can as fast as you can.